Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, June 1st. My name is Alan, and I want to welcome you to my Spiritual Growth Through Recovery podcast. The purpose of these videos is to grow my spirituality by following the AA program of recovery, and I do that by being as honest and as vulnerable and as accountable as I can be. That's why I'm making the videos here. Makes me put some work into my recovery. All right. Now I'm no expert in AA or spirituality or recovery. I'm just trying to share trying to navigate life on life's terms and do it sober. All right. Excuse me. So the recipe we follow here is we read the daily reading, the Daily Reflections book. There's a link in the description if you'd like to follow along. Then I'll just share my take on what I took from the reading, as well as some other topic that is kind of percolating in my brain. All right. All right, we'll get busy. So today's topic is going to be a changed outlook and perspective. All right. So June 1st. New month, new step is kind of highlighted, all right? Changed outlook. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. When I was drinking, my attitude was totally selfish, totally self-centered. My pleasure and my comfort came first. Now that I am sober, self-seeking had started to slip away. My whole attitude toward life and other people is changing. For me, the first A in our name stands for attitude. My attitude is changed by the second A in our name, which stands for action. By working the steps, attending meetings, and carrying the message, I can be restored to sanity. Action is the magic word. With a positive, helpful attitude and regular AA action, I can stay sober and help others to achieve sobriety. My attitude is that I'm willing to go to any length to stay sober. All right, change outlook. All right, so our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. I know for me, I didn't always perceive or respond to life in healthy ways. I just didn't, right? When I look at the word attitude, that has to do with a way of thinking or feeling about someone or something, typically one that is reflected in a person's behavior, right? What one feels about something, and it is highly subjective. So how I feel about something has to do with maybe my past and how my past experiences, all right? Now, a person's outlook would be a point of view, kind of the prospect for the future, how things are likely to turn out, right? So, to talk about attitude determines altitude, and outlook determines the outcome and certainly makes a difference. They're kind of both self-fulfilling prophecies. If we change how we look at things, then the things we look at will change as well. Okay? So when I was drinking, my attitude was selfish, totally selfish, self-centered, and my pleasure and comfort came first. That was me. But yet somehow I was really satisfied. I'm constantly chasing, trying to fill that void, and yet it was never enough, all right? Now that I'm sober, self-seeking has started to slip away. And the key word there for me is started to slip away because I'm still pretty selfish. And I think a lot about having the daily reprieve, based on my spiritual condition. So we'll talk about by working the steps, attending meetings, I can be restored to sanity. Action is the magic word. Action. Just, what do I do every day? I mean, my actions, more than my thinking, will dictate how my recovery is and how my life is. It's a constant reminder for me, on what to do here. So then finally talks about my attitude is now that I'm willing to go to any length to stay sober. And that the term willingness is another word that seems to resonate a lot because I find myself unwilling a lot. So am I still willing to go to any length? It's getting better. I still think a lot. I do just the bare minimum to get by. Anyway, that's kind of what I took from that reading. I just want to talk about the whole idea of perception, how we see things. So some definitions of perception are the way we think, understand, or interpret something from our five senses, kind of a mental impression. That can be subjective or objective, depending on our past experiences. But the way I look at this one is really subjective. So, kind of what's happened to me in the past, I can maybe use that as an example. So when something happens similar, I go, well, this is what happened before. So this is what this means to me, right? So influences on perception can be past experiences, a culture or a faith, our assumptions and expectations, childhood upbringings or traumas. So here's kind of an example. So when I think of, we've all had a situation where we've texted somebody, right? So we're in this back and forth with someone. Maybe we just met them, or maybe it's a current friend, whatever. And there's some good back and forth going on between us, and all of a sudden, there tends to be this disagreement. We see things differently, and then the communication stops, right? How do you perceive it? How do I perceive that situation? What's the right way to handle that, right? So in that case, I think either person could find a way to be offended, right? One person could look at it like, if I said something and they disagreed, well, then I could get upset because they didn't want to continue the conversation. Or the other person could perceive it as I was being rude or disrespectful, and they didn't want to talk to me anymore. So the way I look at this is that when those situations happen, what I do is when I get emotionally triggered, I go into my internal file cabinet, right? I go in my head and I go to the file cabinet and I pull out and says, stop texting me. Okay, that means is I've hurt their feelings. I've done something wrong. I'm not, they're going to pull away. They're going to stop talking to me. And that's something that used to happen to me a lot when people would stop responding to me. I would think, what did I do? I've heard, they're going to, I'm not, no one cares. I'm unlovable, that kind of thing. That's what I used to do in those situations. So that's just how I would typically have handled that situation in the past. Now, the problem with perceptions is that people who experience the same event, like on both ends of that texting back and forth, we can see it differently depending on our experiences. It's very possible that one person just said, you know what, I don't sound like where this is going. I'm just going to stop for now. Or maybe they just got busy and they couldn't respond. Right? I have no idea what happened on the other end. All I can do is go, well, this is what my past experience tells me, so this is what must be happening. And that's a problem because we don't have all the facts. So we're just kind of making it up or assuming. So just because someone stopped replying in the past meant one thing, right? So in the past when someone stopped texting, maybe they're like, I don't want to talk to you anymore, and they cut you out. Okay, well, just because that happened in the past doesn't mean it's happening this time or it will happen again, right? We do this thing called like assumed intent. Well, we have no idea, right? When we're too often guided by our subconscious thoughts and actions. That's why perception, I can't always trust it. I really can't. I mean, that's all we have sometimes, but so some examples where my perception is off today is that when my kids don't reply to me, to calls or texts, or they don't do anything at my birthday or Christmas, they don't love me, they don't care. That's my go-to every single time. Well, the truth is it's not always the case. Sometimes they're just being selfish. They forget. When I was that age, I was kind of forgetful, and I didn't really care too much about my parents either. Didn't mean I didn't love them. Someone not saying thank you or reaching out to me, that, I'll see, nobody cares. That's my go-to, right? All these show unlovable in my folder. I'll go, this means I'm unlovable in my little file cabinet. That's what that does for me. So how do we prove our perception? Well, for me, we need to verify what our perceptions are. Be willing to get more information. We were communicating yesterday and it stopped. What happened? Maybe they say, oh, Jesus, my grandma called, or she stopped by and I got sidetracked. Could have been completely nothing. But I think it's important to get that additional information. We need to look past those first impressions, all right? I think it's important we share with others what we thought, felt, or perceived. We need to be vulnerable about what we experience without being judgmental and pointing the fingers, and we allow them to do the same thing. Just get more information, right? I think it's important to develop empathetic listening skills and become aware of stereotypes and prejudice and engage in self-reflection. Okay, what did I actually experience? How could this be wrong? That kind of stuff. So it doesn't do any good to go down the rabbit hole without all the right information. Now, there'll be times where we think nothing happened and something does happen. Well, that's on that other person then to communicate with us. And I think the more vulnerable and honest we are with other people and in our relationships, this stuff kind of has a way of working themselves out and we move on with life. So what was the best way to handle that scenario with the texting, right? I think the main thing is do not react emotionally. Don't block them. Don't delete them. Share perception with each other, preferably in person or over the phone, because text messages can be really perceived inaccurately, especially emotionally. No idea what they're thinking. I think it's good to assume that the other has good intentions, and they would tell you if they're hurt. Just assuming that they're pissed off or we hurt their feelings doesn't do any good. That's why we got to get that vulnerability and honesty back and forth. We need to let it go, and we talk about it. And And then ultimately, we got to edit out these mental folders, the way I look at it. We got to say, no, that doesn't mean that every time. I got to delete that. I got to get rid of that and start over again. So anyway, I hope that made some sense. I thought that was a good topic because I know my perception can be really off when it comes to relationships. I go to my default way too often. I don't know why exactly. It's not a happy place to be, but I do. And I just hope that as you're going forward in your day, you get emotionally triggered. Be aware of your perceptions, and if you need to follow up with somebody, do that in a phone call or in person. Do it non-emotional, and just try to get more information. Maybe you'll find it to be as useful as I do. So, anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll be back for another video tomorrow. So until then, peace out.